On our anniversary, I cooked a meal for the entire family. My daughter-in-law threw it out, saying her friends don't eat old people food. That night, she opened the fridge and saw a note from someone she thought had been silent all these years. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to write something like this. But something inside me broke that night, and now I can't let it sit quiet anymore. I'm 68 years old. I've lived in Temecula, California, most of my life. It's not a big town, but it's comfortable. Safe. We raised our only child here. My husband George and I moved into our home back in 1988. He was a math teacher. I was a medical receptionist. We're just regular people. I never wanted drama. I just wanted peace and family around me in my old age. We tried for years to have kids. I had 3 miscarriages before Daniel. When he was born, I remember the nurse putting him in my arms and saying, "He's a fighter." That was the happiest day of my life. We poured everything into raising him. Birthday parties, Cub Scouts, piano lessons. I was at every recital, every school open house. I didn't have much growing up, so I made sure Daniel had stability. Home-cooked meals, a quiet house, and parents who loved each other. When he got into UC Irvine, I was proud enough to burst. Then came med school. I thought, he's going to make it further than we ever dreamed. And then he met Lacey. She was a year younger than him, studied marketing. Always looked put together. Long nails, expensive perfume, fake lashes even in the daytime. The first time I met her, she shook my hand like we were at a job interview. Not rude, just distant. She called me Susan, not Mom or even Mrs. Kravitz. She made it clear she saw herself as separate from us. Still, I tried. Every time they visited, I made things she could eat. I even switched to almond milk for my mashed potatoes once because she said dairy bloated her. She didn't touch them. When they got married, it was a micro-ceremony, just 12 people. We weren't invited. She said it was an intimate moment and they didn't want to stress over family dynamics. I cried for 2 days. I should have drawn a line there, but I kept showing up. I thought if I just stayed kind, just kept giving, maybe one day she'd soften. Then came their daughter, my granddaughter. I sent a handmade sweater set. Lavender and cream, soft yarn, tiny pearl buttons. Took me 2 weeks. Never saw it on her. When I asked Daniel, he hesitated, then said, "Lacey doesn't really like homemade stuff. She thinks it looks thrift store-ish." But it was thoughtful. They invited us over once after the baby was born. Lacey's parents were there. She talked over me every time I spoke. Changed the subject when I asked how she was feeling. At one point, she whispered something to her mom, and they both looked at me and smirked. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw, but I still kept showing up. I'd drop off food. I'd offer to babysit. She always had an excuse. The baby's sleep schedule is delicate, or we already have a sitter. So, when our 42nd anniversary was coming up, I decided to host dinner. Just one evening. I called Daniel and said, "We'd love to have everyone here. I'll make a spread." He sounded unsure but said okay. A few days later, Lacey texted me, "Sure, we can come. But please make sure there are light/clean options. My friends might come too. We don't do heavy stuff. Thanks." I let that thanks sit in my head the entire time I cooked. I planned the menu carefully. Chicken piccata with lemon and capers. Gnocchi, but only for the older folks. I made roasted squash for the rest. I did a kale and apple salad with vinaigrette. Gluten-free brownies. Vegan spinach dip. I even used cloth napkins. I cleaned the whole house. Polished the wine glasses. George trimmed the bushes out front and mowed the lawn, even though he's been having knee pain. I wore a navy blue dress and set the table with china my mother gave me the year she died. They were 2 hours late. When they walked in, Lacey had 3 girlfriends with her, all dressed like they were heading to a rooftop bar. Not a single happy anniversary. Just, wow, this is very formal. I smiled and offered wine. Lacey walked straight to the kitchen. She opened the fridge, pulled out the covered plates, and sniffed one of them. "What is this?" Lemon chicken? She asked. Then she turned to her friends and said, "This smells like my grandma's retirement home. You guys want this?" They laughed. Before I could say a word, she started pulling the food out and dropping it into the trash. Her friends helped. "Oh my God, this smells like a funeral home," one of them said. I stood there like a statue, my mouth dry, my face burning. 42 years of marriage. 42 years of cooking, serving, caring. All of it being tossed like garbage. Daniel came in and said, "Mom, don't take it personally. Lacey's just being honest. You don't need to go all out for this stuff. We would have been fine with just charcuterie or something." I didn't say a word. They ordered Thai food on their phones and ate in the living room, laughing, scrolling, posting to their Instagram stories. George and I ate the salad and brownies alone on the patio. He squeezed my hand and said nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed until 3 a.m., thinking about all the times I'd let things go. All the little cuts I pretended didn't hurt. And then I remembered something. Back in 2019, a few weeks after they got engaged, Daniel gave me his old iPhone to recycle. He'd already bought a new one. I never threw it out. I kept it in the drawer in the hallway with old cords and chargers. I don't know why. That night, I charged it. Turned it on. It lit up. Apparently, he never fully reset it. His old iCloud was still synced. And that's when I found them. Texts between Lacey and someone named Amber Nail Polish. There were hundreds. Most just gossip. But buried in there were screenshots. Conversations she'd had with Daniel, others she screen-capped from her Instagram DMs. In one of them, she wrote, "His mom is obsessed with him. It's unhealthy. I told him I'd marry him, but I'm not doing the whole mama's boy thing. I'll break that trauma bond if it's the last thing I do." And then, I know I'm not what his mom wanted. She wanted a boring Midwest wife who'd bake banana bread and babysit. I'm gonna turn him into a man with a real life, not one tied to some sad housewife's apron. That's when I stopped reading. I couldn't believe what I'd seen. But I didn't scream. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I took one of my cleanest Tupperware containers, the kind I use when I bring them food. I printed a note, folded it carefully, and sealed it inside. Then I drove to their house the next morning, used the spare key Daniel once gave us, just in case, and placed the Tupperware in their fridge, right next to her oat milk and probiotic water. The note wasn't from me. It was from someone she thought had disappeared. From Callie, Daniel's ex. The one Lacey hated. The one who once told me, with tears in her eyes, "He's changing. I don't recognize him anymore. She doesn't want him close to you." And the note said, "You finally did it, huh? Pushed her out completely. Just like you said you would." I still have the screenshots. You remember the ones where you said you'd break the mother-son trauma bond and turn him into a real man? You really should have logged out of Daniel's old phone. I saw it all, and I kept it all. Tell your friends, some old people remember everything. After I left that Tupperware in their fridge, I didn't hear anything for 2 days. Then Daniel called. It was around 9:30 at night. "Did you come into our house?" he asked. His voice was tight, like he was trying not to yell. I said, "Yes." There was silence. Then, "Why?" I said, "Check the note." He didn't say anything else. Just hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for another hour, just staring at the fridge. My hands were shaking, but I didn't feel scared. Just tired. So tired of pretending everything was okay. The next morning, George came in with the paper and said, "Daniel posted something." I don't use Facebook much anymore, but I logged in. He'd written some long post about boundaries and how some people can't accept when the next generation lives differently. He didn't name me, but it was obvious. He talked about emotional manipulation disguised as family love and how he was protecting his wife and daughter from controlling behaviors. There were comments. Lacey's friends chimed in. "Good for you. It's your turn to lead your family now." That kind of toxic energy needs to be cut off. One of Lacey's friends wrote, "Tell your mom to stop creeping around your house leaving boomer death threats." A woman from my church saw it and texted me, Are you okay? I didn't know things were this bad with Daniel. That was when it started to spread. Suddenly, I wasn't just a mom trying to hold on to her only child. I was being painted as some controlling, manipulative old woman who couldn't let go. I hadn't even told anyone what I found. I kept the screenshots quiet, but they didn't. Because later that week, one of my old coworkers, Cheryl, forwarded me a post from Lacey's Instagram story. It was a picture of the note I'd left. She had scribbled over my handwriting with red marker and wrote, "Boomer insanity. Found this in my fridge. Who even does this? Get therapy." She left out the part where it wasn't for me. She left out the screenshots. She made it look like I'd written some creepy letter to scare her. That's when I realized something. They weren't just trying to cut me off. They were building a story in case I fought back. So, I did something I never thought I would. I called Callie. She was living in Portland now, working as a nurse. When I called, she answered on the second ring.
Huh?
Her voice was cautious. I said, "I know it's been a long time. I wouldn't be calling unless I had a real reason." We talked for an hour. I told her about everything. The dinner, the food in the trash, the note, the Facebook post. She was quiet most of the time, but when I told her about the screenshots I found on the old phone, she said, "I knew it. I knew I wasn't crazy." Then she told me something I didn't know. Back when Daniel first started seeing Lacey, she and Callie overlapped for a while. She said Lacey messaged her on Instagram. It was short but cold. "You're not in his future. Let it go. You're holding him back." Callie never responded. She didn't want drama. She said Daniel got colder after that. Started canceling visits. Became distant with her parents. She eventually walked away because she didn't want to fight for someone who was clearly slipping away. And she told me something else. She still had all the messages. And screenshots. Including one I hadn't seen, one where Lacey bragged to Amber, "He's almost all mine. I just have to get his mom out of the picture. He still feels guilty around her."
Gross.
Callie sent it to me, and I saved it. I didn't want to go nuclear. I didn't want to ruin my son's life. But I also wasn't going to let them rewrite who I was. That week, I met with a lawyer. Quietly. Just to ask about grandparents' rights. About defamation. About what it means when someone uses social media to damage your reputation, especially when it affects community relationships. She told me to keep records. Screenshots.
Posts.
Messages. And then, something else happened. One of Lacey's friends messaged me. Privately. I didn't know her well. I'd only seen her once. At Daniel's birthday last year.
Her name was Noelle.
She wrote, "I'm not trying to stir the pot, but I've seen what Lacey's posting. It's not okay. She keeps talking about you like you're crazy. I don't know what happened, but I wanted you to know, a lot of us are starting to wonder what's really going on." That message was like a crack in the wall. Because once I replied and thanked her, she sent more. Photos. Screenshots from their group chats. Voice notes where Lacey mocked me. One where she said, "His mom is obsessed. She probably cries when he doesn't text. It's pathetic. I'll post whatever I want. She's lucky I let her see the baby at all." I sent all of it to my lawyer. And then I waited. Because I wasn't just a quiet mother anymore. I was gathering everything they thought would stay hidden. And I had time. A week after I spoke to the lawyer and started saving everything, I got a call from my sister, Helen. She lives in Scottsdale and doesn't use social media much. She said, "Why didn't you tell me Daniel cut you off?" I asked what she meant. Apparently, Lacey had started telling people I was mentally unstable and had shown up at their house, uninvited and erratic. She told her followers I'd written a threatening letter and that she was considering a restraining order. That word hit me like a punch. Restraining order? I hadn't yelled. I hadn't touched anyone. I'd never even raised my voice in front of Lacey. And now she was trying to paint me as dangerous. My stomach dropped. I called Daniel. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Finally, I texted him. "If you're filing anything legal, I deserve to know." 2 hours later, he replied, "You brought this on yourself." That was all. Not even a full sentence. Not even mom. I just stared at my phone for a long time. I'd gone through 42 hours of labor to bring him into this world. I held him through fevers, heartbreaks, bad grades, and college rejections. I fed him every night when George was working overtime. I gave him everything I had, and now I was just you. But then something else happened. Something I wasn't expecting. George got a call from his old coworker, Vince. Vince's daughter worked at a PR firm in Los Angeles. Apparently, one of her new clients was Lacey. She had signed with a lifestyle management company. They helped personal brands grow on social media. Lacey had pitched herself as a modern mom influencer with strong family values and a wellness-forward lifestyle. But she'd also told them she was dealing with a toxic, narcissistic in-law who had been stalking her family. The firm did a deep dive into her online presence, and that's where it unraveled. Vince's daughter, Natalie, told her father something didn't sit right. She said the screenshots Lacey had posted looked edited. She showed him one that looked like it had been doctored to make a message I supposedly wrote look aggressive. Natalie had flagged it internally, but Lacey had brushed it off, saying, "Boomers don't understand how social works." That's when I realized Lacey wasn't just trying to cut me off. She was monetizing it. She was turning me into a storyline. She wanted to be the influencer who overcame her toxic mother-in-law and built her dream family on her terms. She wanted the followers, the sympathy, the sponsorships. And I was the villain she needed to make it all work. I brought the new information to my lawyer. She nodded and said, "This is no longer just a family dispute. If she's altering messages and making public accusations, we're dealing with possible defamation and, depending on how far it goes, fraud." But what happened next was what really changed things. Noelle, the friend who had messaged me earlier, called me. She sounded nervous. She said she couldn't keep quiet anymore. "There's something you should know," she said. "Lacey's been logging into Daniel's email for years. She reads his messages, deletes things. He has no idea." I asked how she knew. "She bragged about it," Noelle said. "Said she filters what he sees so he doesn't get manipulated by the wrong people." She called it digital gatekeeping. I sat there in my chair, stunned. Everything started clicking together. The ignored birthday emails. The text threads that died mid-conversation. The invitations I never got. The photos of my granddaughter I stopped receiving. It wasn't Daniel cutting me out, it was her filtering him, controlling the flow, rewriting history in real time. Noelle sent me a voice message that Lacey had left in their group chat months ago. She was laughing, talking about how stupid Daniel is with tech stuff, and how he still thought he was emailing his mom about the baby's birthday plans. When really, she had deleted the whole thing. I forwarded the message to my lawyer. Now we had proof of message tampering, public defamation, fabricated screenshots, potential invasion of privacy, possible financial motives through influencer branding. Still, I hadn't heard from Daniel. And that's when I decided it was time to tell the truth. Not through lawyers, not through drama, but through documentation. I started writing everything down. Every text, every screenshot, every voicemail. I printed them, dated them, indexed them, and then I sent one copy to Daniel by certified mail, with a cover letter. 3 lines. "You may not believe me, but the truth doesn't go away just because it makes you uncomfortable. I will always be your mother, but I will not be your scapegoat." I didn't hear from him for 3 days. But on the 4th night, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it ring out, but then I picked up. It was Daniel. And he was crying. When I picked up the phone and heard Daniel's voice, I barely recognized it. He was crying, but not the kind of cry you do when you're sad. This was that lost, broken kind of crying. The kind you do when everything you believe starts to fall apart in front of you. He said, "Mom,
I didn't know.
I didn't know any of it. I didn't say anything right away. I just listened." He kept talking. I saw the screenshots. I heard the voice note. I checked the login records on my email like you said in the letter. She was in there. For years. Then he said something that hit me like a knife. She deleted the email I wrote you about the baby's second birthday.
I thought you didn't respond.
I thought you didn't care. I couldn't breathe. She made him believe I didn't care. That was my punishment. Right there. All those nights I sat by the phone thinking I was losing him because I had failed as a mother. All those times I wondered if I loved too hard or held on too long. She made me doubt myself for years. And he believed it. She knew what she was doing. She played both sides. She painted me as a problem so she could isolate him. She controlled the narrative, slowly, piece by piece. And I let her, because I was too scared to speak up, too afraid of making things worse. I thought keeping quiet would protect the relationship. Instead, it let her take everything. Daniel told me he confronted her.
She didn't deny it.
She told him I was dangerous and she had to protect the family. When he asked her about the Instagram posts and the messages she'd faked, she said, "Nobody cares what your mom thinks. She's old. She doesn't even use Instagram." That's when he told her to leave. It wasn't some big dramatic fight. He said it quietly. He packed a bag for their daughter, told Lacey to stay with a friend, that he needed space, that he needed time. And for the first time in years, I heard my son's real voice again. But I didn't let him off the hook. I told him straight, "You let it happen. I tried to reach you for years. I begged you to see what was going on. You let her humiliate me in my own home, on our anniversary, while I stood there like a fool. You may not have seen everything, but you saw enough and you looked the other way." He was silent. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," I told him. "But you need to carry it too, not just her." He said, "I know." After that night, things didn't magically get better. It was messy. The kind of mess that doesn't clean up in a week. Daniel moved into a short-term rental, took his daughter with him. He put her in daycare and started doing all the drop-offs and pickups himself. Lacey moved in with her sister in LA and started damage control on her social channels. She deleted the original posts and tried to pivot the narrative by posting about private family healing. But it was too late. The PR firm dropped her. Natalie, Vince's daughter, had flagged everything to legal. When they realized she'd tampered with screenshots and used fake narratives to boost her following, they cut ties immediately. Quietly but completely. She lost 2 brand partnerships and got dropped from a mom podcast she was scheduled to appear on. And then came the lawyer's letter. My lawyer had put together a tight, factual cease and desist. It was cold.
Clean. No emotion.
Just screenshots, voice memos, social media posts, and a legal warning that if she continued defaming me or tampering with private data, we would pursue damages in court. We didn't need to file. The threat was enough. She went silent after that. I still have no interest in ever seeing her again. But Daniel? He came around slowly. He started coming by once a week, just him and the baby. I made banana bread again, and this time, no one handed it back. At first, it was awkward. He didn't know how to sit at the kitchen table anymore. But his daughter climbed into my lap, like she knew where she belonged. That helped. Eventually, he said he was sorry. Not just in words, but in time. In effort. He got therapy. He apologized to George in person. He started fixing things not with speeches, but by showing up over and over. As for me, I changed too. I stopped trying to prove myself. I stopped dropping off food. I stopped begging to be included. I realized I had spent so long chasing their approval, I forgot who I was outside of being a mother. Now I take walks every morning. I go to lunch with friends. I joined a senior writing group. And I'm done being silent. The revenge wasn't in hurting Lacey back. It was in showing the truth. Letting it unravel everything she built out of lies. It was in watching her lose her fake little empire built on curated captions and filtered photos, while I sat at my kitchen table, holding my granddaughter's hand, feeding her bites of mashed potatoes she actually asked for. It was in watching Daniel's eyes fill with tears when she looked up at me and said, "Nana, you make the good food." That was enough. That was everything.